I've been on Southeastern's campus for about 4 years now. So I studied for my undergrad here for 3 years, and I'm back here now as a graduate assistant and a graduate student. So I've been around a lot of Christians and been around various forms of Christians, freshmen and professors at a lot of different levels. And a thought that I typically have is, what makes a Christian successful? What are we trying to do? How is it measurable that we are in the will of God? Is it how busy of a schedule that we have? Is it how many people want to stop and talk with us on campus and how engaging we are? And I've seen some people that have a lot of people that look to them and listen to them, yet they don't have internal peace, or maybe they're stressed out all the time. So then can that be the measurement of this external measurement? And what I really think is that it's less about our actions and more about the attitude with which we perform those actions, which is what brings me to Galatians 5:22 through 23, which is the fruit of the Spirit. The background of the book of Galatians, it was written by Paul, and it was written after his first missionary journey around 48, 49 AD. He was writing it to those who were under pressure of the Judaizers. He referred to them in Galatians 1:7 as some people who are throwing you into confusion and are trying to pervert the gospel of Christ. He's passionate about them for two reasons. One, he's the one who first led them to Christ whenever he came there while he was sick, and they took care of him. Two, he used to adhere to Judaism, and because of that, he doesn't want them to be bound by the law and to be bound by all this difficulty of trying to perfectly follow the law. The major theme of the book is to contrast faith from works. Some examples within it is he discusses Abraham, who had Isaac through the promise of Sarah, and contrasting that with Ishmael, who's had through Hagar, which represents the law. He also contrasts the list of the acts or deeds of the flesh with the fruit of the Spirit. And I'll go ahead and list off the acts of the flesh, Galatians 5:19 through 20. Sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. Then a few verses later, in verses 22 through 23, he contrasts those with a stark difference between those and the fruit of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There are a few differences. There's a big difference between this list, but a few differences as far as his strategy in this. These acts of the flesh are done through our own selfish desires. They're done through our choices of what we choose to engage in. Whereas these fruit of the Spirit, and fruit is the metaphor that he uses here, and he's also used in Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, is this natural produce that comes from right relations with God. So it's not us just trying to do these things. It's not us trying to be more loving or to have more peace, but as we draw closer to Christ, this is something that naturally happens within us. He chooses to contrast a list of vices with a list of virtues, which were popular in the Hellenistic world of his day. They were first introduced by Socrates, and Plato was the one who first introduced the cardinal virtues and vices. This is why he chose to do that. I'm going to focus on three of these for the sake of time. Three of these fruit of the Spirit. The first one is love, which I'll argue is the most important one for a few reasons. One, his general theme in the earlier part of Galatians 5 deals with love. It's where he says, for the entire law, in verse 14, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. The Greek word is agape, which is unmerited, great, transforming, and unchangeable. He also uses love quite strongly in 1 Corinthians 13, emphasizing it as the most important thing to pursue. So all the other virtues are included in love and stem from love. Another word is joy, which in the Greco-Roman world was connected to happiness dependent on circumstances, dependent on what was currently happening. And joy in Christ is not dependent on any of that. It's dependent on who we have inside of us. It's dependent on the Spirit of God living inside of us, whether we are a part of the underground church in China or in a 2-story house in America. We can have the same joy through Christ. And it was a big difference between what they viewed as joy in that time. The last one is peace. It was a primary goal of the Greeks to have serenity or tranquility or a quiet mind. So it has a negative tone in that you are of peace if you have an absence of pain in the body or trouble in the mind. But with Christ, it's not the absence of difficulties, but in the midst of your difficulties, it's the presence of Christ and the presence of His Spirit empowering you and working through you. So these three as an example, he's using terms they typically used, but to show them what it means to have that from a godly perspective. I think what the fruit of the Spirit gives us is a measurement of our walk with Christ. Not of what we're doing, the actions we are doing, but the spirit with which we do those. For me, I struggle a lot with prioritizing being a productive person above everything else. I want to do a lot in life. I want to constantly fill my calendar with things to do and people to meet and to do all these things. But I've realized that causes a lot of anxiety within me, a lot of stress within me. And you'll notice that busyness is highly valued around campus. You ask somebody how they're doing, they'll say, I'm just busy. Like they're proud of being busy. They're proud of having things to do because it makes them feel wanted. It makes them feel valued. But I believe that if we can value busyness and productivity, but ultimately we need to desire to exhibit the fruit of the Spirit through whatever we're doing. And if we identify the fruit of the Spirit as a success of a Christian, then that's what we can pray about. That's what we can emphasize. That's what we can invite God's Spirit to come into us to help us manifest that. So no matter what we're doing, we can do it with love. We can do it with joy and peace and kindness. We can be faithful in what we're doing, and we can have self-control in everything that we're doing. I think once we have that measurement, then it makes a large difference in our walk with Christ.
All right.